What if someone told you that one of the most respected contemporary artists in South Korea, a man who has exhibited his work at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, at Saatchi Gallery in London, and now at a prestigious gallery in Los Angeles, has spent nearly a decade painting the same face over and over again? Not because he was commissioned to, not because it was a marketing strategy, not because he was told to, but because he simply could not stop. And that face, it belongs to ParkJimin of BTS. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been here for a while, you already know that when it comes to Jimin and the world of art, the story never gets old. It only gets bigger. So stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share with you is something that goes far deeper than just fan art. This is about one artist's decade-long obsession, a philosophy about human emotion, and a face that, according to this artist himself, carries something that almost no other face in the world possesses. Let's start with who Lee.K actually is, because if you don't know his name yet, you're about to. Lee.K, whose full name is known in the art world as Lee Kil-lust, was born in South Korea in 1983. He entered the professional art world in 2017, and within just a few years, he had already been recognized internationally. The website Singulart named him one of the top 22 artists to watch in 2022. That is not a small thing. That recognition places him alongside some of the most exciting contemporary voices in global art. His medium is portraiture, but not the kind of portraiture you're used to seeing. Lee.K works in a signature grayscale style, building layers of contour lines over a charcoal base, then adding oil paint, graphite, ink, and pencil on top of one another until something breathtaking emerges from the canvas. His work is dense, emotional, and raw. When you stand in front of one of his pieces in a gallery, people who have seen it in person say it feels like the figure in the painting is looking straight through you. But here's the thing that makes Lee.K truly distinctive in the contemporary art world. And this is the detail that makes everything else about this story make sense. Lee.K almost never draws mouths. You heard that right. In most of his portraits, the mouth is hidden, distorted, erased, and he has a name for this philosophy. He calls it the denial of language. Lee.K has explained this concept in multiple interviews and even wrote a book about it. He believes that the mouth, the only part of the human body that communicates through spoken language, is also the part of us most responsible for misunderstanding, for miscommunication, for heartbreak. Language, he argues, often fails us. It distorts what we actually feel. The damage that comes from trying to express emotion through words, and failing, is something he has carried personally throughout his life. So he removes the mouth from his subjects. He lets the eyes do the talking instead. He lets the tension in the forehead, the slope of a cheekbone, the weight of the gaze carry all of the emotional information that words could never capture. He once said it plainly in an interview. "I do not want to reply to indelicate questions in the world. That's one of the reasons why I don't draw mouths." This is the artist who chose Jimin as his muse. Now here is the question at the center of everything. Out of every face in the world, every celebrity, every public figure, every subject he could have chosen, why did Lee.K keep coming back to ParkJimin? The answer, when you hear it directly from Lee.K, is one of the most beautifully specific things any artist has ever said about another person. In an interview with Kosis magazine, published under South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism in October 2022, Lee.K explained his connection to Jimin in detail. He said that after listening to BTS's music for the first time and watching their music videos, he felt that Jimin possessed a special charm unlike anyone else he had ever encountered. But what struck him most was not the performance, and not even the music. It was the face. Lee.K described Jimin's face as carrying something that is extraordinarily rare, a place where Eastern and Western beauty exist simultaneously. A face where masculine and feminine qualities coexist without contradiction. He said that every single angle of Jimin's face has a different personality. The way the light falls on him changes everything about what you see. The way his expression shifts between one moment and the next creates a different allure each time. He also noted something specific about the structure. He said that Jimin's face is very oriental, but the lines from the neckline are thick and angular. This combination, the softness and the strength, the familiarity and the mystery, is what makes Jimin's face almost impossibly compelling as a subject for portraiture. Think about what that means for an artist whose entire practice is built around capturing the unspoken emotional truth of a human face. Lee.K spends his career trying to reveal what language cannot say through the geometry and shadow and light of the human form. And he found, in Jimin's face, a face that already contains multitudes. A face that is already telling several stories at once, even before he puts a single brushstroke on the canvas. Lee.K has also spoken about the personal side of this connection. He explained that when the subject of his work is someone he genuinely admires, the process of creating becomes more enjoyable, more fluid, more alive. He is not painting a stranger. He is painting someone whose presence, even from a distance, has moved him. And that emotional connection translates directly onto the canvas. Here is something that very few people outside of the art world and the ARMY community have fully processed. The career trajectory of Lee.K is inseparable from Jimin's face. Let's look at the timeline. In 2019, Lee.K participated in an exhibition at the Fold Gallery in London. His works featuring Jimin sold out. Not one or two pieces, they were gone. Collectors and fans who traveled to see the show left without being able to purchase what they came for. That kind of sellout energy at an international gallery for a Korean contemporary artist who had only been working professionally for 2 years is remarkable. In 2020, Lee.K posted his top 9 artworks of the year on Instagram, a year-end reflection on his best work. 8 out of 9 pieces were portraits of Jimin. 8 out of 9. That is not a coincidence or a trend. That is an artist telling you, clearly, and without apology, that one face is defining the most productive and creative period of his career. In 2021, Lee.K created what he called his first oil painting of the year, and it was, again, Jimin. He used blue and gray tones to capture what he described as Jimin's Oriental and Western mysterious atmosphere, applying rough, expressive brushstrokes to create something that felt both ancient and completely modern. That painting was later chosen to represent Lee.K at the Focus Art Fair in Paris. And then came 2022, the moment that changed everything. Lee.K was selected to exhibit his work at the Focus Art Fair at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, one of the most storied art venues in the entire world. The Louvre, a place where the greatest works in human history have been housed and displayed for centuries. And what did Lee.K bring to that space? He brought Jimin. His portraits of Jimin were used on the promotional materials for the event. They were printed on the flyers. They were the face of his entire presentation. And the response from the public was unlike anything the fair officials had anticipated. Over 10,000 people visited during the 4-day event. Lee.K described the reaction personally. He said he heard from the officials that many people had been waiting at the entrance before the doors even opened, specifically to see the work modeled after Jimin of BTS. He said he was nervous. He said he was moved. Think about that. People stood in line outside the Louvre, to see a painting of Jimin. The viral spread of those images was enormous. ARMY across the world shared photographs of the exhibition. News outlets covered it. It was one of the clearest, most concrete demonstrations of what people mean when they talk about Jimin's global cultural impact. This was not a streaming chart. This was not a social media metric. This was physical human beings standing in one of the most prestigious cultural spaces on the planet, moved by a portrait of a young man from Busan. After Paris, Lee.K did not slow down. If anything, the momentum around his Jimin-inspired work accelerated. He brought his portraits to exhibitions in Germany, Russia, Portugal, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Each time he appeared at an international art fair, the pieces featuring Jimin were consistently the ones that drew the most attention. They generated conversation. They brought new audiences into contact with his work who might never have encountered it otherwise. In 2024, Lee.K was featured at the Focus Art Fair at Saatchi Gallery in London, another landmark venue in contemporary art. He participated with 80 drawings, many of them previously unpublished, and the works featuring Jimin were again the highlight for visitors. One attendee, who documented their experience on social media, wrote that seeing Lee.K's Jimin portraits in person was something that made them immediately want to pick up a paintbrush themselves. That is the effect great art is supposed to have. It does not just impress you, it activates something in you. In 2025, Lee.K continued to exhibit internationally. Focus Art Fair in New York, an exhibition in Taipei in collaboration with 333 Gallery and Gallery Naui, and participation in the Reborn from Ashes campaign at the Sejong Center in Seoul, created in connection with the Avatar, Fire and Ash project. His profile in the global art community was growing steadily, and Jimin's presence in his work remained constant throughout. And then, in April 2024, Lee.K unveiled a new oil painting of Jimin as part of his Denial of Language series. This one was rendered in blue, purple, and black, a moody, immersive portrait that showed how much Lee.K's technical skills had evolved while his emotional connection to the subject remained entirely intact. Fans worldwide reacted with awe. But by that point, the reaction to a new Lee.K Jimin painting was almost expected, because the relationship between this artist and this muse had become one of the defining creative partnerships in contemporary Korean art. There is one chapter in the story that I want you to sit with for a moment, because it is deeply personal in a way that most of the public moments are not. At some point after one of his Korean exhibitions, Lee.K brought one of his Jimin paintings, a piece that had already been shown publicly and had drawn significant attention, and he personally brought it to Cafe Magnate. If you do not know what Cafe Magnate is, it is a cafe in Busan run by Jimin's father. Think about the weight of that gesture. This artist, who has built a significant portion of his international profile on the emotional truth he finds in Jimin's face, walked into the place where Jimin's family lives and works and breathes, and left a piece of his art there. Not as a transaction, not as a business arrangement, as an act of respect and gratitude. People who were there when it happened described the moment as incredibly moving. It was the kind of gesture that reminds you that behind every piece of fan creativity, behind every painting, every letter, every project, there's a real human being who has been genuinely changed by another person's art. Lee.K has never hidden the fact that BTS's music and Jimin's presence within it affected him deeply. The Busan visit was the most personal expression of that truth. Which brings us to right now, to this month, to what is happening as you watch this video. Lee.K's 7th solo exhibition, titled Zinlivo, which carries the subtitle Jinyibu, a Chinese phrase meaning one step further, is currently on display at Non-Fromseal Gallery in Los Angeles. The exhibition runs from June 5th through June 28th, 2026. And once again, Jimin's face is there. But what happened at this exhibition is the moment that sparked this entire video. Someone who was present at the gallery captured a video of Lee.K working. In the video, you see him standing in front of a large, blank canvas. He looks at a reference image of Jimin. Just once, he picks up his brush, and then in 30 minutes, he produces a large-scale portrait of Jimin's face, dark, expressive, emotionally overwhelming, painted with a confidence and an energy that looks almost effortless. The caption on the video, shared by someone who witnessed it in person, said this: "He painted this whole thing in 30 minutes after taking one look at his reference image." The aura is insane. 30 minutes. Now, I need you to understand what 30 minutes means for a work of this scale and this complexity. Professional artists who work at this level, with oil paint, with thick impasto brushstrokes, with layered grayscale technique, typically spend hours, sometimes days on a single canvas. The fact that Lee.K could sit down, look once at a photograph of Jimin, and then produce something that powerful in 30 minutes tells you something extraordinary. It tells you that Jimin's face is not just a reference image for this artist. It is not something he has to study or decode. After years of painting the same face from every angle, in every medium, across every size of canvas, Jimin's face lives inside Lee.K. It is stored somewhere in the muscle memory of his hand and the instinct of his eye. When he looks at that face, he is not seeing it for the first time. He is recognizing something he has known for a long time. That is what a muse actually means. Not just inspiration, not just admiration. A muse is the person who unlocks something in you that you cannot access any other way. Lee.K found that in Jimin's face. And 9 years later, 30 minutes of painting proves that the connection has only deepened. I want to come back to something Lee.K said because I think it deserves more space than it usually gets in conversations about the story. He described Jimin's face as the coexistence of Eastern and Western beauty, masculine and feminine qualities, with every angle offering a different personality. From an art historical perspective, this is actually a very precise and meaningful observation. Not a vague compliment, but a specific artistic assessment. In portraiture, One of the greatest challenges an artist faces is capturing a face that is alive. Not just technically accurate, but alive in the sense that it communicates something different every time you look at it. The greatest portraits in art history, whether we're talking about the Mona Lisa, Vermeer's girl with a pearl earring, or Lucian Freud's raw psychological studies, all share this quality. They look different depending on the light, the distance, your emotional state when you encounter them. They never fully give themselves to you. Lee.K is saying that Jimin's face has this quality in real life before it ever reaches a canvas. The duality he describes, east and west, masculine and feminine, familiar and mysterious, creates an inherent visual complexity that does not resolve. You look at it, and there is always something more. There is always another angle, another expression, another quality of light that reveals a different story. For an artist who has built his entire philosophy around the idea that language cannot contain emotional truth, that words always fall short of what we actually feel, finding a face that resists simple definition, that cannot be reduced to a single description, must feel like discovering the perfect subject. Jimin's face doesn't tell you what it is. It asks you to keep looking. And Lee.K has been looking for nearly a decade. There is a philosophical connection between Lee.K's denial of language concept and Jimin as a subject that I don't think gets talked about enough. And I think once you see it, you'll understand why this specific artist and this specific person were always going to find each other. Lee.K's work is about the failure of language, about the emotions that live beneath the surface of what we can say, the grief, the longing, the love, the confusion, that never make it into words without being diminished in the process. He removes the mouth from his subjects because he does not want to suggest that what they feel can be spoken. He wants you to feel it instead. Now think about Jimin as an artist. Think about how he creates. Think about what people who have watched him perform for years consistently say about the experience. They say it is emotional in a way they cannot describe. They say he communicates something in movement and expression that does not translate into language. When Jimin is on stage, he is not telling you a story with words. He is telling you a story with every micro-expression, every pause, every choice about where to place his body in space, and how much to give or hold back. Jimin himself has spoken in interviews about the difficulty of expressing what he feels internally, the gap between what he experiences and what he is able to articulate. He has talked about performing as a way of getting closer to truth than language allows, about how dance and music reach places that conversation cannot. Lee.K's entire artistic practice is built on the same belief. When Lee.K looks at Jimin's face, he is not just looking at a beautiful subject. He is looking at someone who has arrived at the same conclusion through a completely different path. Someone who also lives in the space between what can be felt and what can be said, and who has chosen to make art in that space rather than try to explain it away. This is why the relationship between this artist and this muse goes so much deeper than admiration. It is a philosophical resonance, a recognition between two people, one who paints and one who performs, that the truest form of communication does not require words at all. I want to step back for a moment and look at what the story represents in the larger context of Jimin's cultural impact, because I think it is genuinely underappreciated. We talk a lot, and rightfully so, about streaming records and chart positions and award show wins. We talk about brand partnerships and magazine covers and social media numbers. These things matter. They are real measures of reach and influence. But Lee.K's story is something different. It is evidence of a kind of influence that cannot be quantified. It is the influence that changes what an artist makes, not just what an audience consumes. It is the influence that walks into a studio in Seoul at 2 a.m. and sits in the chair next to someone while they work, even when that person is not physically present. Since 2017, Lee.K has brought Jimin's face to Paris, to London, to New York, to Taipei, to Tokyo, to Los Angeles. He has placed it in museums and galleries alongside some of the most respected contemporary art being made in the world today. He has caused tens of thousands of people, many of whom had never listened to a single BTS song, to stand in front of a painting of this young man from Busan and feel something they could not name. That is a kind of cultural transmission that is almost impossible to engineer. It happens organically, or it does not happen at all. And it is happening because one artist looked at Jimin's face and saw something he could not stop trying to capture. 8 out of 9 best works in a year. A sellout in London at the beginning of his career. Over 10,000 visitors at the Louvre. A painting left with Jimin's father in Busan. And now, in June 2026, a 30-minute masterpiece created live in Los Angeles. One look at the reference, brush in hand, and done. If you needed one image to explain what Jimin's influence looks like in the world of fine art, that 30-minute painting is it. Here is what I want you to take away from this video. The next time someone asks you what Jimin's cultural legacy looks like beyond music, beyond charts, beyond numbers, tell them this story. Tell them about an artist who entered the professional world in 2017 and spent nearly a decade returning to the same face because he found in it something that his entire artistic philosophy was built to explore. Tell them about the Louvre and London and Busan and Los Angeles. Tell them about 30 minutes and one look and a canvas that holds something language cannot carry. Lee.K's 7th solo exhibition, Zinlivo, is open right now through June 28, 2026 at Non-Fromseal Gallery in Los Angeles. If you are anywhere near LA and you have a chance to go, I genuinely think you should. And if you are here because you love Jimin, because his music or his performances or his presence in the world has meant something to you, I want you to hear something directly. What Lee.K sees in Jimin's face is real. It is not a projection. It is not wishful thinking. It is the assessment of a working artist who has spent years studying human faces professionally and who arrived at the conclusion that this one is unlike anything else. The duality, the mystery, the way every angle reveals something new, that is not a fandom talking. That is an artist who removes mouths from his portraits because he believes language fails us and who still, after all this time, cannot find enough words to explain what it is about ParkJimin's face that keeps pulling him back. Maybe that is the most honest tribute of all. If this video gave you something, please give it a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who care about these stories. Subscribe if you want to be here every time something like this comes up. And leave a comment telling me what you felt watching this, because I always read them, and I always want to know. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. And as always, I purple you.